Yeah, welcome everyone for High Performance Computing, an advanced scientific computing course here at the University of Iceland in collaboration with the Jülich Supercomputing Center in Germany. So the lecture of today is really a lecture 0, meaning the prologue of the lecture, and we will explain a little bit what you can expect from this course. Basically clarify lots of frequently asked questions usually. And this course has been taught since now 7 years. So we integrated lots of feedback from students all over the years and also from other training events in terms of high performance computing. You see here a couple of logos which are in one way or another really important for this lecture, either provide funding or having several topics that are very important for this lecture. And you see also here where you can find information in social media about this course and also about the lecturer, and where you basically find the recordings in this YouTube channel. Throughout the lecture series, which will be in front of us, don't worry to get in contact with me at morris@hui.is. And let's go a little bit into the course outline that we have basically now prepared for you as part of this high performance computing course. So you see the outline of the course is very interesting, having 16 lectures covering practical topics, but also theoretical and conceptual topics. So we will start here with high performance computing to really understand what high performance computing is, the basics of it, what important projects are there. Then we will find out that the message passing interface, the MPI, is quite a key central parallel programming tool, technique, and language that you can use in order to make parallel programs, to have parallel computing software that can leverage then HPC. In order to do this, we need to understand some parallelization fundamentals, which are quite important, and we will cover in lecture 3. Partly, of course, a more theoretical topic, so how you break up a domain, like, for instance, a certain type of room where you want to understand the temperature when you open a window or close a window. So you break up the room in different parts and have the airflow then simulated on large quantities of cores on a HPC system. Of course, all of these may not be really meaning anything to you. We'll come to these topics one by one, and we'll then also go one step further of thinking about advanced MPI topics where things like parallel I/O play a role. So where do you store all that information that you compute? Also, there are specific parallelization techniques like parallel I/O, for instance. And then when you think about that there's lots of communication between all of these different algorithms that are running on different cores, then we need also interesting communication aspects like Cartesian communicators we will talk about, and also several data structures, because you want to do things in parallel. You want to simulate a whole domain, a whole, let's say, weather forecast perhaps on several different nodes, and what they have to interchange and exchange in terms of data is really important, is, let's say, physical variables when it is a simulation sciences, simulation like we have in the weather sciences. And we will come to this as an example in the second part of the course. But in the first part of the course, you see we have aligned lots of topics which are more from the techniques. So we will continue after really understanding MPI and having already assignments on MPI. We will continue then of going to the shared memory space, which is essentially today the OpenMP technique and tool that we use there. Also, this is an excellent way of doing parallel programming. And once we have done this, we can also think about combining them both. So using MPI for inter-node communication, while OpenMP is then used within the nodes as the shared memory paradigm. So all of these then will be leveraging certain different patterns, where we see every now and then we have something like stencil methods, for instance, where we have certain techniques, how it's the same thing in every iteration through a physics simulation, for instance, in terms of communications, in terms of halo regions used. But we will come to this and see how that materializes when we are already as basically half of the course. So more recently, and I'm sure many of you have heard about it, accelerators and graphical processing units, GPUs, becoming more and more important. and this is also true for high performance computing. They are now really a key ingredient in the top 500 systems which make up the supercomputers, the really most powerful HPC systems we have on Earth. And essentially this is a interesting momentum where we see the performance of GPUs really being not only relevant for the simulation sciences, which are basically known numerical methods using known physical laws. It's also quite a substantial impact these days in parallel and scalable machine learning and deep learning, which is more from the data sciences domain, but equally can leverage GPUs to quite some extent. So we will talk about it and give several examples in the form of clustering of methods in parallel, of data, but then also, of course, go to classification schemes of data where we use deep learning algorithms like convolutional networks, for example. Now, this is really the base foundation of high performance computing, if you will. And there are certain other topics which I basically put here out, but this is, I think, a key idea of really understanding high performance computing. But if you really want to understand it fully, the key idea why we do this in HPC is really the domain sciences. So we started perhaps a little bit with parallel and scalable machine learning, but still this is the more general techniques and different domain sciences. So when we go to 11 here, in lecture 11, you will notice that health and neurosciences and all of those following from 11 up to 15 are different specific parts of science that leverage HPC in one way or another. So this is quite interesting because I picked here several pieces for you, and always in these lectures we'll draw a specific aspect in different areas where HPC is used. So in HPC and health and neurosciences, we will talk about the Human Brain Project and also about the COVID-19 data analysis together, which would be very complicated if you don't have HPC and basically impossible. We will see that the data sets in this context are incredibly large. For instance, a human brain, which has maybe 1 terabyte on data just for one digitized brain that we analyze. Then coming to lecture 12, we have a complete different domain, but still using HPC a lot. It's a field of computational fluid dynamics, understanding heat flow, airflow, liquid flow. And in order to do this, every now and then, this is really tightly intertwined with the context of finite element and finite elements methods that we will talk about in lecture 12. So here we will understand why essentially an airplane will actually be designed first in a computer before it will ever be built. And hence you have the logo of the course, which we hide here in lecture 12 a little bit. Also there we will have always different ideas from different applications really in these domain sciences that we will explore. And one of the interesting things of this particular lecture will be then the adaptive mesh refinement, where we then see that domains and kind of a domain decomposition that we will learn in earlier parts of the course does not need to be static. It could be dynamic, like a smoke or basically fire simulation, which every now and then can be really dynamically adjusted. But you see that then in lecture 12, and we have a basic understanding of what high performance computing is, what domain decomposition really means, and so forth. Now, when we look then on more topics, we have systems biology, which we basically will then explore more from a theoretical and conceptual perspective, but we will deep down go into the biology system that we have, for instance, in humans, from cells up to the whole, let's say, body, the virtual physiological human. So we have different areas of scale here where systems biology really matters. And then on the other end of the scale, you would have bioinformatics, which has, interesting applications like BLAST for sequence analysis that you maybe have already heard about, especially here in Iceland, because Decode Genetics is doing this quite intensively with different tools. We will talk about some of them who can be parallel executed in HPC systems. Now, lecture 14 will us bring then into the field of the very small. So we will see in molecular systems really how this is building up and intertwined with the material sciences to really understand materials, to understand the building blocks of actually matter that we have out there. So in the end, you will see all is about molecules, and you will see that basically different force fields interact with these molecules. And there are different interesting packages and libraries I want to make some points in, which are existing in HPC for these type of problems. Now, lecture 15 then brings it in a way all together, that you have, let's say, a terrestrial system. Let's say you would be interested really in simulating what's there, the Earth. And then, of course, what is important for us would be, for instance, understand the climate change these days. But there you need to do different things. You not only have a simulation maybe that is doing then the kind of the real the Earth coverage, if you will. So you would also have to take into account different areas. So we will talk about coupling different models here. So we will have, let's say, if you want to understand the water flow in all of these systems, we have, of course, basically a parallel flow in the groundwater modeling. But of course, we also think about the atmosphere, what's coming there. So we would have 3 different models that we will couple, which would be an interesting, special, unique point how to use HPC in lecture 15. Now, the lecture 16 will be our closure, and basically this will be more an informal lecture, more or less, where we prepare for the exam, of course, but also think about job requirements. We will map the job requirements that you will see out there from different areas of sciences to the course content, and we'll see how you basically are prepared now to step into the region of simulation sciences, or if you're interested as well, how could you basically use HPC techniques for the data sciences that we will explore with machine learning and data mining and deep learning techniques. Now, in between these lectures, from 1 to 16, we will every now and then have different types of lectures, which are either lectures invited by experts. So some of my PhD students will present, some of my postdocs will present. And then I will also every now and then present you some practical lectures as well for the hands-on assignments in our context of the course. So I will demo some certain aspects, so how to submit jobs to a scheduler, how to program and actually also compile a C program to be executed on a HPC system. So several techniques will be here explored, and I will make some demos around it, how to do MPI, how to do OpenMP. So this will be not only typical slides, but also some demos. And all of that will be, of course, recorded and then made available on YouTube. So this is really the outline of the course, but let's come back a little bit to the course motivation. So where is it positioned in the field of high performance computing? It's a large field these days. You could talk endlessly about it. And 16 lectures might not really be enough, but we try to really brought you a way of understanding HPC, hopefully very well, by thinking firstly about this red aspect here, that the HPC course is about lots of fundamentals, core, where really MPI, OpenMP are things you should use, shared memory, distributed memory, CUDA, and accelerators. These are all topics you really have to know by heart. The interconnect of HPC that differentiates basically it a bit from cloud system. Then you also would think a bit much more domain sciences, like basically you see here the smoke and fire, and then the adaptive mesh refinement I was alluding to. You see crash tests, computational fluid dynamics again here in this area, but also terrestrial systems that I talked about to really think about the different levels that we would have here, like in the atmosphere, for instance, or you would have the land surface model, or the groundwater model. And all of them are needed to couple in order to really understand what's happening in terms of water in this context. So hence you see these pillars, which really in the broad field of HPC will pick selected domain-specific science and engineering domains, a second part of the course really to understand where HPC is really mostly used, how it is basically also give you a good view of where jobs are in this area, and what basically are the general ideas here and there from terms of libraries, from techniques like domain decomposition, or basically even coupling models that we will discuss. A very specific domain, specific science, if you will be then of course also the data sciences, which becomes more and more important, for instance, in neuroscience and medicine, and in health we will look at this. So, and also on remote sensing images, which are really multispectral, hyperspectral images from the Earth. So interesting data-related problems. With this, we come a little bit to the course motivation, which is, of course, parallel processing. So this is a key word here. While in basically the cloud computing course, which is a complementary course that some of you already have taken, we had more distributed computing, but parallel processing only several times. Here, parallel processing is really the dominant factor, and it is still distributed because we will see that we will use different cores, different nodes then really, and in the end, we use maybe a complete room full of machines in order to solve a very complex problem like you see here on the logo on the course, where we want to understand why airplanes are flying, how we can simulate this, and what basically is there the idea of using then high performance computing to really speed up the process of the simulations. We want to understand the stress on materials which are coming basically out of these simulations. That's why we're doing it, in order to guide also the material design or the construction process of this to let them fly in real. So you see, again, that this parallel and this kind of idea that I need lots of computing is, of course, something which differentiates high performance computing perhaps with traditional scientific computing that you, the one or two of you maybe know here already from Maple or MATLAB, these, let's say, more serial computing machines that you have on your desktop PC, laptops, that already can do quite good scientific computing today, because also desktop laptops and so on are very good today. But still, we're talking here about relatively small and less complex applications compared to those that we will tackle in the course, which is then really about advanced scientific computing. This means that we have really computational simulations that require a lot of number crunching. We would have large scale machine and deep learning, not only one GPU we use for training, we use maybe 96 GPUs in parallel for doing a really complex machine and deep learning task. We learn to really think about large parallel computers, not, let's say, a small multi-core that you have anyway on your laptop already, right? Here we think about much broader, bigger computer systems. So a little bit of architecture goes into that. Interconnects between different nodes, between CPUs play a role, which we will allude to. In context here, we talk often also about scientific domain-specific approaches, or even these days we talk about co-design of architectures by domain-specific approaches. And so we'll go also in these to understand what advanced scientific computing really means. Orders of magnitude, multi-core chips are used. We use memory, which is by far not enough if I would use just a serial computer. I will use many core chips like accelerators and GPUs, and I use them in a fashion that it's really scaled, so not being bound to one GPU only. So scalability will be another factor that we will talk about compared to the speed up that I will also achieve when I use more and more parallel cores. I want to make things faster. But the scalability means I can maybe also run bigger problems, not only make it in faster, but also have more detail, have basically more domain covered by the simulations. This all enables some form of simulation of reality, really, based on known physical laws and numerical methods, as we will look to. So what you're able to be learning out of this would be that you have the state of the art of parallel processing and high performance computing. We collaborate here with the EuroHPC Supercomputing Center in Germany, and you will have access to some of these systems, which is really the cutting edge center for high performance computing in Europe. They are, always part of machines in the top 500 lists of the supercomputers in the world. So we will basically understand how we could create even these high performance clusters, and why their scalable networks really in a very key centric aspect in it, like InfiniBand, for instance. So we will talk about data intensive workloads, also thinking about the cutting edge when it comes to big data problems on these HPC machines, which you cannot really use maybe on the cloud. When I talked about the 1 terabyte brain exactly, or when you have also larger satellite images to look at. So we will understand the domain decomposition. So what you have to do to really break down a big problem like this airplane into the very few, to really look, how can I decompose this aircraft to different pieces where different laws of physics maybe govern, And we will understand that this is, of course, not very easy. So we will come to different ideas how you can do a decomposition in parallel. Of course, comparing parallel programming then to serial programming, we could understand already that having, serial programming with Java on your own laptop or so is completely different. Also, when you think about that, you do a couple of threads, maybe in your Java program on your laptop. Here we're talking about really lots of interactions, message exchanges, continuously, maybe in a synchronous but also asynchronous manner. So basically also having not only one or two threads, but many, many different threads on many different processes running on all these different nodes that you see a little bit explained here, right? So you use many of those machines in parallel. And with this comes quite some complexity we have to talk about, and that you will learn to come out of this to really understand parallel programming and what are the critical problems. HPC lives a lot from environment tools. We will see there's a module environment, which is often there on HPC, which means there's certain tools which stand the test of time and that support the programming or the analyzing of performance behavior. That goes beyond the scheduler that, schedules jobs. It also means like supporting the programming of having different environment tools or even performance analysis tools that shows you really how your parallel program is really running on all the different cores in a very parallel manner. So for this, we also think about different abstractions. Of course, you can immediately think that we are often maybe limited by computing or by memory, even if we have parallel computing. Having a terrestrial systems like the real world, really like the real world then simulated, is basically out of question. So we have to do, and this goes along the domain decomposition partly, have different abstractions of how parallel computing can work on various levels, and we will talk about it in different methods. We will sometimes also just approximate solutions, and we will talk about why numerical methods are in a way not really precise and accurate as they maybe would love to be, but they have always some uncertainty inside, especially if you have, let's say, weather forecast after 3-4 days. And you basically can see that already the prediction power of the model in 4-3 days will be lower and lower. And this has to do with a numerical approach there that we will talk about in this course quite often, because it is very often related to physical problems we will solve in the course. Now then, with this, you also, with the course at the end, especially, you will have some foundations. Of course, we are not saying that when you come out of this course, you're a neuroscientist. That's not what this course is about, and also not a material scientist or a terrestrial expert. So, but you have the basic building blocks. You understand what it means, and maybe we inspire here and there's some interest of you, one of you or two of you that would be maybe continue in this domain, will be maybe interested to having a PhD in this area. So you already have learned here in the course really the foundations of some of these scientific domain-specific applications. So when you're then coming out here, you can really program these HPC systems with different programming paradigms, MPI, OpenMP, CUDA. You really can use scientific computing simulations on these HPC systems and scale them up using different types of technology, like parallel file systems, for instance, to make also the dump to file really in a high performant manner. We will have lots of different tools and technologies that really handle this parallelism complexity, which are quite important in this field. Basically, a couple of things about your lecturer, because you would be now questioning, okay, can I really teach all of that? So what's the history of me? I'm working since 16 years by now in the Jülich Supercomputing Center of Forschungszentrum Jülich in Germany. That's this little part here of the whole domain of the basically large research center you see in this forest here. And we're around 200 people just being experts on HPC, while I'm more basically an expert in data-intensive HPC. And with this, we are part of the larger Helmholtz Society in Germany, which you see here. And there we have also the Helmholtz AI and the Helmholtz Association, which are quite known for using also partly really HPC a lot. So I basically did my computer science PhD from the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology quite some time ago, but also did my Master of Science already in basically data visualization, data-intensive sciences, and also steering of HPC applications in astrophysics, in plasma physics at that point in time. And since then, I actually had lots of positions at the Jülich Supercomputing Center, deputy division leader, research group leader of the high productivity data processing research group that is still there today, and where several members of those group will also present here as invited lecturers in our class. You see other really recent activities. Of course, all of them will be having some interesting aspect with HPC. I was a lot working with CERN and the Large Hadron Collider down there, being the HPC expert in this middleware aspect. I was one of the co-architects of the Extreme Science and Engineering Discovery Environment, EXCEED. It's the US HPC infrastructure in the past, together with Ian Foster, together with Andrew Grimshaw. I have several roles in different, let's say, other projects, like in the Deepest project, where we co-design some technology. But I'm also the European EuroHPC joint undertaking governing board member for Iceland here. And we will talk about more later what this is about. Of course, in the last 7-8 years, I already gave lots of University of Iceland courses here, HPC courses, statistical data mining, cloud computing, big data. And all of these slides are somewhere also accessible for you on the website from my personal website, but also several links you see basically in social media. Of course, the University of Iceland has also basically now gained your interest. Otherwise, you would be not a student here, I assume. Hence, some information and facts about it. For us, it's very interesting that it's ranked number 6 in the field of remote sensing. That's a field where we also actively publishing in. And you see, we have lots of different students also from Erasmus Mundi. We have English courses that we have here, but of course, we are also having several Icelandic courses. In the end, we have a collaboration here between essentially the University of Iceland and the Jülich Supercomputing Center with an interesting research group I already mentioned, where we have AI topics with deep learning, but also physical topics. You see essentially here the Jülich Supercomputing Center with different domain-specific simulation and data labs. A structure we also here have in Iceland established, where you can also continue maybe the research when you're coming out of this course. And we will see that in one way or another, always the facilities, the modular supercomputers and modular we will talk about, is something we will use in the course. And also we do in research when we think about the Deepest EU project, where we really explore what a modular supercomputer might be. Of course, we have also several industry-related projects we will talk about. Now, when you think about the EuroHPC joint undertaking, we will see that we have there are different projects where also Iceland has now basically simulation and data labs, which you see here at the University of Iceland, but closely collaborating also with the University of Reykjavik. So we structure the HPC community here more and more in order to get us united, to really think about parallel computing together and also applying for machines and grants together. For this, the Lumi HPC system will be quite important in the future in Finland, where we're all together, but also we have here in Iceland basically different resources like Gapur or also Jötun that you will use as a teaching cluster here. And of course, in some parts, it is overlapping with the European Open Science Cloud, which is much more a topic of the complementary cloud computing and big data course, but essentially also has lots of aspects related to the area of HPC. So when we think about HPC, we always want to differentiate it a little bit to the HTC world. When we think about that, HPC is really classified or defined in a way that you have really lots of different cores that you see here, network cores, where the network interconnect between these cores is extremely relevant, should be of very good performance. While you have high throughput computing, you have more and more pizza boxes, so to speak, as we used to call them, and actually put them together to a cluster and let them work together maybe with Ethernet or so. So the network interconnect is not so important. You have throughput problems where you are interested to get as much as possible through, but the interconnect between the communications basically are not that intensive. So the complementary cloud computing and big data course will be talking much more about the HTC here. So this course is really going in depth in the high performance computing aspect. And here you see different examples why that is interesting. We have constant evolution in this field. Technology changes, technologies disappeared, and that's why I brought this into the game. of this slide, you would see that in the 80s, this would be considered a supercomputer, 1 million flops, so floating point operations per second. Yeah, so this is the idea how you benchmark this, essentially, these systems. And we see here the gigaflops, teraflops, petaflops, exaflops, 10 to the 18 flops, for instance, for exaflops, where we are currently looking at. But you see also it was a long way. In 2009, we had here this interesting machine with more cores inside, which was a Blue Gene system, a Blue Gene P. But then we have Blue Gene Q, another system from IBM, which has already 500 cores in 2013, and then end of service in 2018. Now, what I want to demonstrate with this is also the evolution was quite fast, increasing lots of cores. But the interesting thing is also that this technology doesn't exist anymore. Right, so IBM has stopped this architecture, and this is an interesting aspect when you think about that application developers, they are becoming experts on these, and now we have new architectures. Other vendors like Cray are there, and you have already heard from NVIDIA plays quite a role internally with GPUs these days. So this is an interesting idea to think about high performance computing from a perspective that is really changing and driving technology frontiers every time. And here you see a little bit the kind of strategy of our institute in Jülich. So you see here two different ideas. When I started in Jülich, that was 2004, we had a room full of one big IBM Power 4 supercomputer, 9 teraflops. But immediately becomes clear that if you really listen to the application developers and the simulation scientists, they need sometimes general purpose clusters, which are really number crunchers, and really need CPUs with high single thread performance, but they're using also, let's say, moderate cores, but on a really scalable way. And these are two different paradigms, if you will. And you see that the strategy of how we created these supercomputers in the past from 2004 on, and I continue here, not going into each and different detail because this would be having not enough time here in the lecture today, until today, where we are in 2020, 2021, of course, these days, where we have the Jewel supercomputer being the powerhouse, still following this model of the so-called modular supercomputer approach, so that we have different parts of the HPC machine being for different purposes. And we will talk about this again and again in the different lectures. This brings us to the deep series of projects which we have been, participating from the University of Iceland, and what was driven by Jülich really to establish this modular supercomputer design together with vendors like Intel, like Xtol and Magware, which are all in the field of HPC, together with many different other application developers, CERN you see here, but also the Norwegian University of Life Sciences, for example. So an interesting set of partners where we have been the experts mostly of data intensive sciences in this project, but you see we had also different other projects from domain specific sciences on board that really driving the modular design that we see here in the middle, where I again would say the cluster module is the one which has very high single thread performance, a very powerful CPU. But on the extreme scale booster, you think about more GPUs, accelerators, and really scaling out to big problems. Every now and then you need things like Apache Spark, Apache Hadoop, so more a data analytics module, which has higher number of memory, for instance. Things and technologies we really usually have more in the cloud computing and big data course. We need a scalable storage service module, which is usually with the parallel file system used and is really very well interconnected with the network federation, which basically says it's not really a cloud, it's really a H performance computing system. With this, we explored new technology like the NUM, the network attached memory. We basically were publishing on a new concept that is not on the market yet. And the idea that you see here a little bit is that systems maybe use that even together, these different modules at different parts of the application lifecycle. A deep learning workflow here, climate simulation maybe, or something from the Human Brain Project using different modules. So, and we use one of those, this DUM module, which has really several NVIDIA GPUs included as part of the course, together also with our U-Twin cluster that we will introduce very shortly, also in practical lectures to get your hands on very early in the course, to be also starting with the assignments very early. Coming maybe a little bit more to the course organization before we close the first part, and in the second part I will go much more into detail what you can expect in terms of topics. Now from the modus operandi, we have really the Canvas tool now. We're changing from UGLA to Canvas. We were doing our baby steps in the last course with cloud computing and big data with this. We learned lots of lessons. So also here, this course will be only based on Canvas, also no Gradescope anymore, no Piazza anymore. So you should all see it already. It is published under this RAE 204M course in the Canvas space. When we talk about the grading and the course activities, we will have 3 assignments, which are 40% of the grade, which I guide usually with practical lectures. So we'll do some demonstrations. And for those, you can really create, please, groups from 2 and 3 people and send them to me. And the idea is there really to learn parallel programming step by step in different assignments. We will also do some quizzes, which are really 2.5% of 1 grade. That's around 4 quizzes, where in the end, the point is just to memorize a little bit what we learned in the course, but having really a good preparation for our exam in the final days of April, really. Where then we have the big exam, which is 50% of the grade. It would be basically at the end of the lecture series, where you have already then very well prepared for the quizzes. And you see here, how I organize the course is often that these lecture has yellow blocks. And if you're very well in understanding those yellow blocks here and also associated figures in context, then you're actually very well prepared for the exam. And this is something what we will build up together throughout this lecture. Every now and then, of course, as I told you, we'll have some invited lectures that would be from companies, also from PhD students of me, and also postdocs, which have, let's say, more insights about several different aspects of the course. So when you think about the grading, it will be also done via Canvas. You will see that the submissions and grading via Canvas is basically straightforward. The final grades, however, will be then in UGLA, and we have to transfer them from Canvas to UGLA, which is in the moment a little bit, let's say, from the experience we had from the past course, a little bit taking some time, mostly in delay in administration. And you see here some examples from the cloud course, how that could work. So you have a specific area assignments, where then the quizzes, the assignments, and also indeed the final exam with the 50% will show up. And you have to do it on the monitor, basically directly, this assignment, the exams, I mean, basically also because we expect that COVID-19 probably will continue to impact our teaching very well or very much. So this is more about the kind of context where you can find more information. All the recordings of each lecture, this is an example again from the Cloud Computing and Big Data course. All of these course lectures will be mostly broken into parts, with part 1 and part 2 being uploaded then separately to YouTube. And then we basically can always explore that several of those, which may be assignment debriefs or quizzes debriefs, that will be basically then put in Panopto and Canvas. The idea is here really to open up the teaching material as part of the EuroHPC project to make it more broad accessible for the public, that we have good teaching material in this course. You can help me spread the word about HPC if you like. If you like this context of the course and also the lectures, we are here everywhere on social media. Also with EuroHPC, that's very important. The National Competence Center in Iceland for HPC, that's important. So we have here, Facebook, we have Twitter, LinkedIn, on Instagram. You can find me there. I'm usually always publishing a little bit about the subject, of course, and then also about our lectures. And helping me here and spread the word would be very appreciated. Some always ask about associated literature. So there's one book which is really required if you really want to know the real deep details. However, all the lecture material will have all what you need to know for this course. So there's no necessity to buy this book, but of course, it will be one where I take several examples out. Other bibliography will be web pages and things like this, and more further readings, which I provide then in context usually, and have always a bibliography section at the end of each of the lectures where you can then have real websites look up and more information. In a way, that's really all I wanted to tell about the organization of the course. Of course, the content we will now do in the second part of the course. But before I go there, I would like to summarize it with a small video here from Praise. and which actually captures the array of essence of high performance computing. So that's really all for the first part of the prologue, and see you in the second part of the prologue.